Hey, welcome to a new episode of the Ripple Effect Podcast. I am your host, Steve Harper, and in this episode, we are going to just do a recap of the amazing year that we've had. I need to give a special shout out as we start this episode to my editor, Jello. Jello has brought a whole new dimension to what we are able to produce on this podcast. I am blown away by his talent. I love his take on how we've done these episodes. He's made me look so freaking smart this year. And I just can't begin to thank him and my other VA Deli enough for their efforts to really get this show amped up, a bigger, wider audience, and up level my game, which they have challenged me to do. I feel like I'm answering the call, and I'm so grateful for their efforts. As I look back on this year, I am blown away by the amount of amazing guests that I've had. And I got to brag on myself a little bit for a second. I feel like I have really gotten into this interview thing. I am approaching every interaction that I have as an opportunity to learn. And I am throwing myself at the feet of my guests and saying, feed me with your knowledge and your experience and your awesomeness. And they are answering in kind. And I am just so blessed and so grateful. And so we just wanted to do like a quick montage of some of the highlights from this year's show. It has been one for the ages. I mean, as we draw to an end of season 9, I am just incredibly humbled that so many people have been so positive, either about coming on and being a guest on the podcast or listening to it with regularity. We've got this really nice undercurrent of fans that are promoting it. And I'm just very humbled. I'm very, very humbled that you tune in and have listened this year. I hope you'll stay along for the ride next year, season 10. We've got some great people lined up for the new year. And I have heard the feedback. I know that a number of you have asked for more solo podcast episodes just to break up the mojo between interviews, and I think I will be more willing to accommodate that. I was willing to accommodate it this year, but I just had a line of people who wanted to get on this show. And that just took up all the time, and so I'm very lucky and very blessed. And as I look at how many different agencies and agents are reaching out to me for their clients, whether it be authors, whether it be actors, people that are in the creative space, people that are out creating and building new businesses, I am blown away that these big wig booking people are like, hey, I want to get my client on your show. Like, my show? What? Do you know who you're talking to? Like, this guy doesn't have a big influence, doesn't have a huge circle, but they love the quality of the work. They love the show, the output. And in fact, I actually had a conversation with an agent a little over 2 weeks ago, and they could not believe that we're kind of doing this, with a very limited staff. They're like, it's very well produced. It's really a great offering. And I'm just surprised that you're doing it pretty much on your own with an editor. And I was like, well, thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. I don't know how the other shows do what they do. We just do what we do, and that's all we know what to do. And so anyway, I'm grateful and humbled about the response, especially this year. And I can't wait for you to dive into just a really cool, fun recap of the podcast for 2024. And as I look forward to 2025, I am further excited about the opportunities to meet even more amazing people, bring a few guests back from earlier seasons, and just keep the momentum going, right? Just keep going and keep that rippling on. So, and as always, I would be remiss to tell you, if you are not familiar with our Ripple community, please check out the Ripple community. Go to ripplecentral.com/POND. That's the pond. The pond is free to join. Our Connect and Grow Ripple coaching program. It's a 12-month immersive experience where you get time with me. You get a library of amazing content in our master classes, our TED Ripples, our roundtables. We'll have special events, different things for that program as well. But come into the pond, check it out, and then go explore, Connect and Grow Ripple coaching and see if it's a good fit for you, because I'm excited about some of the things that we've got planned for 2025. Big things for that program, but also big things for our community. And so just coming in and hanging out and participating, being an active Rippler, I think you will definitely gain some value and benefit there. So come check it out, ripplecentral.com/pond. And then you can also go to ripplecentral.com. Just go to the pond link in there, and it'll actually share a link for the Connect and Grow Ripple coaching program. So if you want to sign up, do that today and start your 2025 off the right way. All right, with no further ado, let's dive into a recap of the Ripple Effect podcast with Steve Harper for 2024. You have this reputation of wearing this lab coat, which you put on right before we hit record. Tell me about that and how you've utilized that as a conversation starter, an opportunity to get people to make inquiries about what you do and how you do it, and how you become known for it, for speaking from the stage in the lab coat.
Yeah, well, so I think that having something that people can hook values on or impressions on is really important. I mean, as you said, I've spoken everywhere. I'll insinuate myself into almost any audience I can that I can teach about this process that we do and the industry. And they inevitably forget what I tell them on stage, but they always remember the lab coat. I mean, I don't go anywhere that people aren't like, "Hey, where's the lab coat?"
Yeah.
So consistency, picking something. The other thing is that you can develop a bit around it. So my bit is that I wear it because science tells me to. The study of enclosed cognition studies how the clothes you wear affect you and the people around you.
Yeah.
And they did a test, when they put a lab coat on a group of people, they'll score 70% higher on a cognitive test than similar group of people wearing street clothes.
Wow.
So when I'm wearing this, I think I'm smarter than I really am. And then, of course, the lab coat is a uniform. People are more likely to believe what you say, to follow your directions, right up to shocking a stranger in one famous test. So not only do I think I'm smarter than I am, but you think I'm smarter than I am. And this is exactly what we're trying to do with conversion optimization, a completely unfair advantage over our competitors because we're studying this stuff.
Yeah.
And then if I'm going to walk out on stage in a lab coat, and everyone's going to go like, I got to bring it. I got to be good.
Yeah.
So it ups my game so that people are remembering good things associated with this shtick.
How does what you know as a musician being on stage inform what you do day to day as a coach?
I think off the bat, I just think presentation. Like I have myself put together from years of performance.
Yep.
So I'm not performing, but I am a performer. So I think and I think as a performer, there's a light around us as performers. Like I think there's something that we, high vibrational, right? So
Yeah.
it's like there's something vibrational around the gift of music and the gift of sharing that with someone. So I think that, as an entrepreneur going into a business, I have the same chutzpah that I would go on a stage and then walking to someone's house. It's like when I'm on, and I'm on for you.
Yep.
And so no matter, and I think there's also a realness to it, which the same thing as a musician, which I've learned over the years, where it's like, if I'm getting on a stage and there's something off in me for that day and I have to actually perform, I have to authentically say, listen, so here's what's going on, but before we start this, I'm letting you know, this is going to be centered around this. Because if I can show up as a human being, and this has taken a long time. And I think this is also where it's like, you know what? I am not perfect. I am nothing near perfect. I am so flawed. But I have learned that where my flaws came from, so I can keep taking them out and adding the light, right? So
Yeah.
as I'm coaching you, I'm learning through my other people that are teaching me stuff. So I think that the authenticity of getting on a stage or going in with a client and being like, you know what? I understand. And let me tell you why, because this just happened to me when I walk. And then you're able to have someone see that you're not here. We're just here. It's just that I have stuff that I'm able to do because I was here. So if I was here and now I'm here, oh my God, you have to be able to come here. Like, how can you not?
It really got me thinking about a couple of really braggadocious people that, I think they do that because they feel like they have to, like nobody else will see them in the world unless they have this big significant thing. And they think nobody in the world would go look it up in an encyclopedia to prove it, to not be true.
Yeah. Well, it is linked to Field of Dreams because it's Eddie Sissons syndrome.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. And Eddie Sissons was a character and a significant character in Shoeless Joe in the novel that inspired Field of Dreams. But and Phil, I'm talking to Phil. He regrets not being able to include it because he really enjoyed that. But you make a movie, it can only be so long. You have to make certain cuts. But like going down that rabbit hole, it was just so interesting, and it is off the path. But when I found out, wow, there's like these guys actually wrote this academic paper on this fictional character, right? W.P. Kinsella creates this character, and then it turns into this real thing. And not only does it turn into a real thing, but based on the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, 1 in 5 men who claim to have played in professional baseball are lying. I mean, that's incredible.
That is incredible.
Right? And like what you're talking about, the psychological part, I asked the guys who came up with this paper, and they didn't know a lot or go into that area, but I do think what you said is true, and I think a lot of the reasons you might think up are true for why people do that. You want attention. You haven't gotten attention. We all want attention, and we often downplay that, but then it leaks out, right? That's, as a therapist, you see all these people suffering because they have feelings, they want attention, they want to belong, and they push that down, and then it leaks out in all these harmful ways. So I think for a lot of men, in this specific case, and of course it's women too, but in this case, you want to be seen. Like, you want to do great things, and you start to tell this, and it might start small, and then it just snowballs, and all of a sudden, you played for the Yankees and you hit, what does the guy say, 16 unassisted triple plays, right?
Yeah.
And it just gets out of hand, and if nobody's calling you on it or can prove it, then that's the world you inhabit. Yeah.
How do you become an owner in the process, and not just a owner from a decision maker perspective, or I'm going to go create my own movement within my neighborhood or whatever, being an organizer, but really at the end of the day, like, how do I impact change so that not only can I get my neighbors excited, but the neighborhood over, and get people to say, look, this is a problem, or this is something worth tackling. And when we go and we do it together, not only are we going to learn some things about ourselves, but we're also going to learn about what true community is and what the power of that true community can be.
That's right. And live and in person, right? Because I think we have this sense, and maybe you and I, our generation, we don't believe this fully because we lived in an analog world, right? We grew up in an analog world, and we saw that, you actually had to be with people, like, but the younger generation, like our kids, they really are used to saying they're building community online. And to me, yes, there's definitely a benefit to building a following and a community online. but do you really know that community? Like,
Right.
well, are you able to, there's something about being able to have a conversation in person and get to know a person over time in real time and in live that is different. And I hope that we can bring that back with more regularity.
Look, I think it's amazing that I have had so many incredible people on the podcast in 2024. Just the level and the quality of the content that we produced this year just makes me so, so proud. And what I think made me the most proud is the fact that I had people that were seeking me out. I want to be on your show. I like your interview style. I love how you coaxed, this person into a deeper conversation. I actually had somebody tell me that they had noticed one of my interviews at the beginning of the year that the guest was just a little guarded, a little reserved, maybe a little nervous. I don't know why. I'm just me, right? But that somehow I managed through the course of that interview to take them by the hand and guide them into the warm, comfortable into the pool so we could ripple. And I just, that comment stuck with me, that I feel blessed that I had that opportunity. I feel really seen and heard that somebody acknowledged that and saw it. I'll be honest, I can't say for sure that I knew what I was doing at the time, but that's just me. That's how I ripple. And I think actually, if nothing else comes from the show, I want to show you, my audience, even if you're not familiar with somebody, you haven't ever connected, you maybe know them just on a very peripheral level, how if you come in with an idea and where you want to take the conversation, or you have a commitment to creating a safe space for conversation to take place, then by all means it will. And this is not just a podcasting interview technique. This is how I conduct myself out there in the world. And it's important to me to demonstrate that, to show up, as I always like to tell my tech team, right? To eat my own dog food, to use a overused term that Microsoft used to say in probably the 90s. Geez, just dated myself. But really, at the end of the day, you can't tell people how to do something and then be a different way. And so the podcast has actually made me a better connector. I think even a better rippler. It's challenged me to raise my game, not just to have better questions, not just to, be a little more concise in my interview style, but to be a better human, to connect with another person who sadly is not sitting across the table from me. They are, in some cases, tens of thousands of miles away. And I need to make them feel comfortable on an online platform, seeing me seeing them, but having a conversation as if we're in the middle of my living room, right? And it is just so great to feel like we hit our stride this year. And the guests banging, right? They made it easy for me, but I just loved that observation. I've known you a long time. I didn't know anything until you started posting that this was, a passion. I bought a boat. I'm doing this. I'm like, what the, where,
What the what?
what happened here? And so, where did this come from and how did you get into it?
Well, back in 2006, I read a book. The book was written by a man you may have heard of before, Mr. Jimmy Buffett himself.
Yeah.
And it is Salty Piece of Land. And I have given that book to more people than I can count. I probably should own stock in that company if it was an option. And because it was the only book I had ever read from cover to cover.
Yep.
And I read it 4 times. I've never read a book more than once on top of that. And when I got through with that book, our joke always was, at the time, was the book didn't cost me $24. It cost me about $24,000 because I bought a boat, I renovated a boat, and then I tried to teach myself to sail. And I kept it for about 4 years. It was down in Aransas Pass, Texas. So wherever you're at, it's down around Corpus Christi, Texas, on the coast. And I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which you're familiar with at the time.
Of course, yeah.
And so I would drive all the way from Albuquerque. I'd get up, 4:00 in the morning and drive all the way to Corpus Christi.
Yeah.
It's a haul. And I would spend 1 to 2 weeks. I would stay on my boat. I would do some renovations and sail. And I got to teach my dad how to sail some. It was really cool. And it has a lot of memories, and that we had named it after my mother, and it was really a cool experience. And then I had a huge life. I don't know if trauma is really the right word, but it was pretty traumatic. Event happen, and I ended up sailing the boat and just took a break. And back in 2019, I sailed a little bit with a few friends here, there, and yonder. But in 2019, some friends of my significant other said, "You know what? You guys should come charter with us." I was like, I don't know what that is. And they're like, "Go charter a boat. We go rent a boat." And it's like, oh, I never really even knew that was a thing.
Yeah.
And so it took them a couple of years. So by 2019, we finally said yes. And we went to the British Virgin Islands, and
the rest is history.
Kind of the rest is history. The biggest thing that I think is important to say here is sailing wasn't easy for me. Learning to sail is not natural for me.
Okay.
Everything is hard. And it didn't help that I was literally terrified. And I don't say that lightly. Terrified. I have physically thrown my body on the floor of a boat, screaming, blood-curdling screams when the boat heeled. I mean, just healed a little bit. I mean, went from this to a little bit of this, and I'm like going, oh my God, we're all going to die, just screaming. It was that traumatic for me. And to find some captains that were willing to work with me through that has changed everything.
Okay, what questions should they be asking about how they consume their news or where they consume it? What do you think they should be thinking about as they look at their news literacy?
Sure thing. And it's a smart question to ask, and I'm glad we have the opportunity to help educate people just a bit. So there are several things folks can do. The first is what I mentioned earlier. One of our primary lessons for students is to stop and think, what is this? I'm not even going to call it news necessarily. What is this piece of information trying to do? What is it, and what is it trying to do? One of the sure tells about something is, does it elicit an emotional response? If it does, that's a flag for anyone to think like, well, what is this? If we joke around the office. I don't actually think this is in one of our lessons, but it might as well be. Like, if you're reading something, online or print or whatever that says, you won't believe what, la da 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 da. It's like, you should probably approach with skepticism, right?
Believe what they're telling you.
Exactly. It's like, you won't believe what this person said, or you won't believe what happened. It's, clickbait is the term, right? It's clickbait to get onto it. And so you're going to want to be aware of your, the purpose of the information that's being given to you. But also then your own reaction to it. And, we had a phrase on one of our public campaigns a while back. It's like, think before you share. And that's actually one of the best things you can do to stop the spread of disinformation, is to think before you share. Like I mentioned, disinformation becomes viral because people share it. Right. And so just stop and think that this is not true. Right. And we actually, not to plug us too much, but we actually have a website called rumorguard.org where folks can go in and see some of the most prevalent viral rumors that they probably have seen online. And we break it down for them to tell them why we know this isn't true. Right. And it's not just our word, it's the work of other fact checkers that we aggregate for folks. But we can tell you what isn't true. But if people want to spend a little bit more time with us, we explain to folks how they can figure out if it was true. They can actually go through the process. We don't hide anything. It's like, we won't just spit out the answer like, not true. We'll give the analysis, but then we'll also give folks the resources to do that analysis on their own. But one of the best parts of that website is you can take, one of these viral rumors that we have debunked, and you can immediately share it on any social media platform you want. So if you put out the debunked rumor, it affects the algorithm so that when folks start clicking on that rumor, they'll very likely see the debunk of the rumor too, right? So in this process, not only does RumorGuard allow people to learn what is the truth, but they could also learn how to discern it themselves. But it actually gives them something tangible they can do to push back against disinformation. Right.
I love that. Yeah. You can't show up in any other aspect of your life until you're actually ready to work on this and here. and be prepared to start improving there, because then you're shortchanging everybody else, right? When you don't do it. And so I think that's such a huge point that you made.
Yes, and thank you for what you just shared, because you jogged my memory to what I was going to say, which is great, Steve. And it aligns with what you said. So, I'll say to a client, like, so what's the goal? Well, I'd love to work out 5 days a week. Okay, that's awesome, but that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
If you're not working out at all. So what do you know without fail that you can do? And then there's a pause, right? Reflection.
Yeah.
Well, I know I could do at least 2 days a week. Great. So let's get it on the calendar and let's hit those 2 days a week, because what happens when you hit the goal, even if it's smaller, right? Even if it's not the ideal goal yet, is you feel good about yourself. You're like, yay, I did it. And then guess what happens 9 times out of 10? Because you're like, oh my God, I did it twice. I want to do it again. And usually clients come back and say, guess what? I did it 3 times this week.
Yep,
So
exactly.
it's better to set a smaller goal and then end up doing better than the goal you set than to bite off too big a goal and fail right out of the gate and then feel unmotivated to keep even trying.
Exactly.
So, you said something very similar. So thank you, because I think that's so important. Start with like the smallest goal. I want to meditate. Well, that can be incredibly hard for people that haven't sat still and learned yet how to control their mind and shut, press the off button. That's, so you're not going to sit down and say, well, I'm going to go 30 minutes. You're going to crawl out of your skin, right?
Yep.
But if you say, all right, I'm going to do 3 minutes, not even 5, like I'm going to do, or I'm going to do 120 seconds and I'm just going to close my eyes and get still. And no matter, what happens, no matter how much anxiety I feel, the spirit, not the ego, the choice maker is going to say, we're just going to stay here despite the noise in your head, despite the feelings, until the time is done. Yeah. And then, you do maybe 3 times a week for 3 minutes. And next week, maybe say, let me try 3.5 minutes. You don't even have to go up to 4. Like baby steps, there's a philosophy called Kaizen. Yeah. And it's very much the same, as the 1% philosophy. And it has a very, interesting history and origin, Kaizen, but I'm not going to go into that because I'll go off a 20-minute tangent and Steve will be like, come on back, Jen. But it's a great way to really, and if you look at highly successful people in our culture, athletes, people that are, successful in any field, you'll see that they're consistent and they're hyper focused on 1 or 2 things in their life maximum. They're not juggling 6 different goals, and so, it might feel like nothing, but, starting with the smallest thing and doing your best to be as consistent as possible, trust me, it's like watering a little potted seed. It starts to grow. Yep. And you feel motivated and you feel momentum and you feel excited and you're able to mark progress, tangible progress, and keep going. So I'm all about the small wins. I'm all about starting where you are. And yeah, I think the last thing, kind of what you spoke about too, you have to start by getting still and getting silent. And that's often the power of a coach too, because you're blocking out time to say, for the next 60 minutes, I'm just going to drown out all the noise in the world, everything around me. And I'm going to really tune into me. Where am I at? What do I need? What do I want? We always know the answer if we just have the willingness to get still and get silent and listen.
You used a term, though, I want to go back to that I think maybe my audience wouldn't necessarily be familiar with. So maybe you could define it. But what does agency mean?
Agency means that you have choice in your life.
I love that.
We often think that we don't have choice, that life is controlling us. Now, things are going to happen in our life that we don't have control over. I didn't want my parents to die young. I didn't want a good friend of mine to die from cancer at a young age. I didn't want my husband's startup to fail. There's a lot of things that have happened in my life. I didn't want to have postpartum with my children. There's so many things I didn't want to have happen, But I knew somewhere deep down inside of me, and for me, it's in the belly. It's my gut, right? I wrote a book on intuition. Yeah. It's like that core wound, that core part of myself, not necessarily a core wound, but that core part of myself that knows that I have choice over how I live my life every single day. And so that's agency. There is such a power of potential. There is so much more. I mean, I love studying human performance and people who do these amazing feats and things like that. And I'm just watching them or researching that, this sense of agency of like, asking your listeners today. And it's not like you have to become a Pulitzer Prize winner or run a marathon or become famous. It's not that. It's like asking yourself every day, how do I want to live today? Oh. What is my heart leading me today? I do it every morning. I call it my intuition prayer. I wake up and I say, show me what I need to see. Let me hear what I need to hear. Let me see what I need to see, and let me meet who I want to meet. I am in your guidance, and I follow that. And sometimes I have to make left or right, or Dr. Ellen Langer, I make decisions, and I make those decisions. It's not about making the right decisions, by making the decisions right. But it's really around knowing that, the people listening today, that you do have agency over your own life. You have choice. Oh, and it could be great. I call it turtle steps. They could be very small steps each day, or Martha Beck calls it 1% pivoting, 1% pivot. You just make these small changes, but they soon add up to big transformations in people's lives.
As I look to put a bow on 2024, I hope that a few of these, little insights into the interviews we gave in 2024 will inspire you to go back. And I want to share my strategy for podcasts. This is what I do with my favorite podcast shows, whether I'm listening to Kevin Rose or Tim Ferriss, Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm listening to different influencers out there on a variety of topics. I'll listen to the show. I'll maybe make a few mental notes, or if my journal's nearby, I'll make a few notes. But where I really get the depth of the interview is going back and utilizing the re-listen as the place to sit in class and take copious notes, to learn from the nuggets. And every one of my guests had multiple lessons to teach you. So I encourage you to go listen to the episodes again with pen in hand, with your Ripple Connection journal in front of you, and take copious notes. Take what you hear and don't be a passive audience member. Use it to your advantage. Be active with the information, the knowledge, the gold nuggets that were shared this year, and use them as you move towards 2025. I will be back again with season 10. Oh my God. Cannot believe that we have had 10 seasons of this podcast. But here we are. And as I move towards 2025 and a whole new list of amazing guests, I just want to offer my sincere gratitude for being along with me for this ride, to allow me to find my way as a podcast host, to figure out how and where I wanted to take this show, and letting me use it, quite honestly, as an opportunity to open up a door, and in some cases, kick open a door to great new relationships and friendships, which I feel I've become with almost every guest this year. I'm so blessed by everyone that participated this year. I am truly, truly blessed and grateful for every single person that lends me their ears or tunes into the YouTube channel and is not scared away by this ugly mug interviewing some beautiful, amazing person. I'm just grateful that you're here and along for the ride, and that we keep rippling as we go into 2025. I want to thank you. I want to say I appreciate you, and I want to wish you the best holiday season. I want you to finish up 2024 strong, and then I want you to look squarely in 2025's eyes and say, we're coming for you, baby. We're coming for you. Until next time, my friends. Go out there and do good in the world. Make a difference in someone's life. And as always, create those positive ripples, because you're not only doing it for the world, you're doing it for yourself as well. Take care and see you soon. Ripple on.